into the truth frequency.
Your protection from deception. This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The world is governed by very different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. I have as co-host with me this evening, Cathy Dunson. Cathy, are you there, sister?
I am. Good evening, everybody.
I hope that everybody is doing well and that life finds you safe and blessed. Today is the full moon Sabbath, the 15th of Tishri, and the beginning of the 7-day festival of Sukkot, or Tabernacles, as some people know it by. But it begins on a Sabbath and ends on a Sabbath. And I know for a lot of those that follow the solar calendar, that Sabbath for you begins tomorrow at sunset and will continue on till Saturday at sunset. But in reality, the 15th of Tishri always falls on a Sabbath, and the festival always ends on a Sabbath. And so I do hope that everybody is having a good day. I know this has been kind of a tragic week, and that many of you, myself included, have been spending the past few days consumed in study, trying to find out the truth of what occurred with regard to the Vegas shootings, said to have been perpetuated by this guy, John Paddock, a lone wolf, they say. But in my opinion, when you look into and investigate the matter, and even just listening to the police scan of the events of that day, that it's clear there were multiple shooters, multiple hotels involved, and that whether there was some, as far as the crisis actors as part of it, I do believe that there were actual shooters, and that there were automatic gunfire, and that there were also those belt-driven, those guns, the huge guns that are fed by the long, the bullets that are connected together and fed into it like a belt. In my opinion, it's clear that when you listen to the sounds of that, it's you can tell the differentiation. And so we're going to be talking about some of those things tonight, but it certainly is difficult to try to come to the truth of these things, because there have been so many false flag events happening over this past few years, and in several different ways. Some where people are murdered and killed, and that there are, as far as like 9/11, where people in the buildings and the buildings being blown outward by what had to have been bombs that were placed prior to the event of that day occurring. They said that, it was 2 planes, and yet there were multiple buildings that went down on that day, including World Trade Center 1, 2, and 7, and even 6. And so, how do you get all of these buildings going down in 11 seconds when they say that the steel beams melted because of the heat, and that the floors began to pancake? The official story is just completely bunk, and in this case, it is as well. And so we're going to be talking about some of those things. But I did think, and I appreciate you sending me that post from the airline stewardess from Spirit Airlines. I don't even really want to share her name, but I do want to share her post because I think it will give us insight into this particular story, this particular event, and that there were multiple occurrences, which is verified not only by the police scan and the things that were reported by police officers all across Las Vegas, but also by...
Sin? I'm sorry. Did you bring Kenneth on?
No, I did not. Can you bring him on?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
I was beginning.
Okay.
I thought he was on the call. Hold on. Let me.
Sorry. I spaced it, but
that's okay.
Yeah. While you bring him on, I'm gonna.
He must be wondering what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. I apologize. I completely forgot about that. But yes, Kenneth Beers will be on with us as well. Those of you that know and are familiar with his work, he worked with Bill Cooper back in the day on The Hour is the time of the hour, his particular radio program back in the day. And so he's a very kind brother, been on the forefront of these studies for a very long time. And specifically, Cathy's going to bring up something that he shared with her that also ties into this as well. But is Kenneth with us?
Kenneth?
I'm here, brothers and sisters.
Hey, brother, how are you?
Good to hear you. I'm so glad to be on with you tonight.
Yeah, great honor to have you here as well, brother. But I'm going to open with this lady's just a post that she placed on Facebook that Cathy had shared with me. I think it's critical for understanding and putting together the pieces of this puzzle of truth, because they never report in the mainstream, and I don't understand why. But they always lie to us about everything. But anyways, so here goes, is the beginning of the post. Especially to those of you saying to stop talking about this, stop making assumptions, etc. Call me crazy, call me dramatic, call me whatever you want. I'm posting this for those of us who were on the Strip Sunday night, who know what we saw and what we were told by police officers, security guards, and even the local news when all of this madness started. And I am posting this in hopes of informing others who have believed everything they've seen on the news. If while leaving the Cosmopolitan we had been told there was one shooting at the Mandalay Bay, Anthony and I would not have been worried for our lives, and we would have continued to go out knowing we weren't headed to that particular area of the Strip. But that's not what we were told. We were told that there were 7 confirmed shooters and confirmed deaths at multiple hotels, including the Bellagio, the Aria, the New York. Being told this by a security guard who then told us to go to the 3rd floor for our safety, Anthony said, "No, Ricky, this is a very popular hotel. I don't feel like the 3rd floor of this popular hotel in public is the safest place. We're going to try and get out of here right now." Running back to our hotel next door, the Vidadra, we are told once again by police security checking our ID and room key, yes, multiple hotels affected. Go to your room and do not leave, unquote. We then get to the room, immediately turn on the news and start watching out of our windows to figure out what is going on. The news also states live that the Bellagio had been affected and there was 1 confirmed death. Now, skip ahead about an hour. The news is no longer stating anything about the other hotels affected. They say it is 1 person. Every bit of info that was being initially given to us was disappearing. We could physically see from our window view the alarms going off at the Cosmopolitan and the multiple cop cars and ambulances pulling up there as well. We wanted more information about what was happening at these other hotels right next to us, and we weren't getting it, and we still aren't. Monday morning. I am, of course, telling my friends and family about our experience, and I was starting to really feel like I was crazy everyone was telling me there was only one shooter, and I just couldn't understand what I had seen. Finally, other people like myself started speaking out. I was relieved to know that I wasn't crazy, but now just as confused as to why the media is trying to hide this information. There are now videos and statements popping up all over the web showing proof of other shooters and other affected hotels. Why are they trying to hide this? If for no other reason, think about being a family member of the others who died or were injured at these other hotels. They deserve the respect and the real truth as to what happened to their loved ones. Now, can we please stop talking about gun control for just a few minutes and figure out what is really going on here? Figure out the real motive of this incident and inform people of the truth? Laws can be put in place for anything and everything. There will always be people who break them, and especially with all the technology we have nowadays, it is not very hard to find anything you want, whether it's an illegal weapon, drugs, anything. Laws will always be broken. So let's stop pretending this incident wouldn't have happened if more laws were in place, but instead demand the truth about what really happened that night and why. Don't be so naive. I have great respect for this woman and posting her thoughts and her perspective on what she felt occurred on that particular night. And just saying this really quickly with regard to listening to the police scanners and 7 hours of, even them sending strike teams out to clear all of these different hotels, that there was video footage also released about the shootings at the Bellagio. And these were very real bullets. They knocked out the glass. It was all shattered. And that was all posted as well. You wanted to say something, Cathy?
Well, it's interesting about the Bellagio video. It's just this woman on her cell with her boyfriend or husband just talking about what had happened. They were sitting at the bar at the Bellagio at the front, and then bullets came whizzing by. And so she's just recounting this whole event and even stopping and talking to security guard, and the guard is confirming that, the hotel is on lockdown and you see people sitting all around. Then they go to the elevator and she turns the camera around and says, well, we're all fine. This is the extent of the video, and YouTube has been taking it down. So there is censorship at a level I have never seen before.
Right. Yeah, they are removing a lot of anything that goes against the official story.
Right.
And I've been downloading, things that's like, good for you. And I think people should do that because, they are removing as much as they can, as fast as they can. And I think that those of us that have been on the forefront and know about government-sponsored terror and these false flag events, we know that it's very important to grab the early footage, because that's when the truth comes out. That's when the truth is revealed, and that is the footage that is disappeared and then dominated over by the official story, which is always whatever the government wants us to believe, and that all of the different mainstream outlets, they all toe the same line and parrot the same story. Kenneth? Are you there, brother?
Yeah, what I wanted to mention was I heard this first about 5 a.m. Monday morning Eastern Standard Time, so maybe 4 hours after the episode, I understand, maybe 3 hours. And immediately, I got this sense of the Oklahoma City bombing back in April 19th, 1995, where I was a student of truth, so to speak, working with Bill Cooper and Michelle Moore. And exactly what you two mentioned, the early information coming out of newscasts and eyewitness testimony is the most important and the most crucial. And if you try to make an analogy back to the Oklahoma City bombing, the narrative changed literally by the hour.
Right.
I started to see the same thing happen here. Like you said, these multiple gunshots. I heard some of the original video from one was from a cab driver.
Yes.
Bay, and you could hear distant shots and up close shots.
Right.
Now, people were trying to say, well, those are just the echoes. But then you would hear the distant shots first and then up close shots, and the rate of fire was different on both. So immediately I started to think, boy, this is another meme that's being established for the American public, just like in Oklahoma City and 911. And that's when I perked up right away. It's like I've got my radar on, so to speak, and then I just started to hear a story formed. I think it was about 7 o'clock that morning. They talked about this term, lone wolf.
Right.
By all the media. And I'm thinking, wait, it's way too early to establish this, especially with everything's just happened in the last several hours. And by then I knew this is another Oklahoma City bombing. This is another 9/11. This is a false flag for some reason, and we can get into that later. But early Monday morning, my radar was on, and I was starting to listen. And then, Cathy and I exchanged some emails, and I started to realize I wasn't the only one that had this sense.
Yeah, true that. And there's so many people that are awakened now with regard to understanding government-sponsored terror and these false flag events. And yes, we do understand that, in the Boston Marathon bombing, Sandy Hook, and other, that there have been crisis actors involved. And with this particular event, there are crisis actors involved, but there are people that have been shot, and that there, and also, with regard to, and I've seen some of this, but even in the police scan, the police officers that report the multiple gunshot wounds and people, the emotion is very real. And there's now, of course, we don't know as far as the photographic or video evidence. There is some video out there that seems to show this one individual going through as far as these different victims that are on the ground. And I did see one other video of this individual where his arm has been shot and his side has been shot and he's bleeding. But again, we don't know as to the extent and if the numbers are correct. And I'm sure more and more will be established as we go forth. We're still really new into this whole episode and trying to figure out what's going on. But definitely, what we are being told as far as there being one shooter. And this guy, Stephen Paddock, who, if you don't know, he was a multimillionaire, very extensive professional gambler, had, in my opinion, no real motive for, they said he joined ISIS a month ago, and that
6 months now. That's a big
oh,
headline
is it 6
tonight.
months? Okay.
Yeah, they're back on that.
Ridiculous. Yeah. And that he was some kind of jihadi. In my opinion, he was a patsy, just like Oswald and so many other. Even if he was somehow connected, FBI informant or whatever, he certainly was not, in my opinion, the shooter. And he's a patsy
theory.
For sure.
There's another theory that's kind of interesting that, but I don't really buy it. But for him to have all those guns in the room, it could have been one of these.
If he put them there.
Right, but it could have been one of these gun running operations because he had two planes. They're trying to paint him as someone who might have been involved in a clandestine operation, maybe CIA or something, where he'd been set up trying to sell guns undercover to this is the theory, to jihadis, and that it went awry and that they killed him. This is the theory. They killed him and then did the massacre to cover the track, anyway. But I mean, that would explain why he had all those guns in his room, which really doesn't make sense.
If he was the one that put all those guns in his room. But they said that he'd been gambling for 8 hours before this incident. And
he was getting his casino points up.
Yeah, right. And that he was a platinum member, and that That's why even the room that he had, that perhaps, because you win all those reward points for being a high level gambler, they give you and cater to you as as being a high level gambler like that, and that it could have been that he just that was his room under his name, and that's how he became a target. But again, all these things are still being clarified. We know his brother came out and said that he helped him move because he moved from Florida to Vegas not long ago, and that in helping him move, he didn't own a lot of all these firearms. He had 2 handguns that were in a safe, and was not an avid gun enthusiast. And we're talking military grade weaponry, automatics, and they said that they found all of these 23 high level, automatic guns and huge firepower and things that only, somebody that had military clearance, and not just military clearance, but you'd have to be well connected to even find and locate and gain access to this kind of firepower. And for him to have all these guns and then not even be on some kind of watch list somewhere, that just it's smells fishy to me. But one other thing, and I'll get both of you to comment as well, is that with regard to listening to the police scan, even in the police scan, they report multiple shooters in multiple hotels. The Tropicana, there's an individual that was in military fatigues and that had a black duffel bag, and that he went into a white RV. There are people shot outside of the Tropicana as well. They said that they had him cornered. There were 4 police out there. Whatever happened to that was not further reported on. Also in the police scan, they said that there were shots coming from, that there was a shooter on the floor at the concert, which is interesting because when you listen to this one other, I believe it's a security guard. I'm not sure what his role was, if he was walking towards the crowd that was coming out, and you can clearly see Mandalay Bay up on the right side, but the shooting is coming from the left where the concert was. And in the police scanner report, they report a shooter on the ground near the concert, near the gates, and they also report a shooter from the 32nd floor, the 29th floor, and also the 4th floor. And so there were multiple shooters. They sent in this Zebra, called some kind of Zebra unit. It was a SWAT and police strike force to the 32nd floor, to the 29th floor, and to the 4th floor. And so, and the other thing that reeks of paramilitary, in my opinion, with regard to this whole incident is that everything was done quickly. All the shooting, they said, transpired within the first few minutes, and then they made their getaway. And supposedly Stephen Paddock stayed in his room for over an hour, and then also, if I remember correctly, in the police scan, when they broke open into the room, they reported as getting, taking the suspect down. And so whoever it was, whether it was him or not, or if he was placed there later or whatever, he didn't commit suicide. He didn't shoot himself, as is also reported. And so I do recommend that people listen to the police scan, Broadcastify. I don't know who they are, but they did an incredible job. The beginning of the police scan is at 10:08 when the first shootings are reported. You can hear all the different police reporting and all the gunfire even from the different cops that are calling in. And it's very interesting and gives you insight into this event, unlike, any other. Because, like, even with what happened with 9/11, that was several months after the event that the emergency tapes, the firefighters and the police, the radio, and all that had transpired on those emergency channels was released as well. And I listened to all of that, and it's interesting that they reported getting up to the 78th floor where there were two small pockets of fire, and they had these hoses that they were about to knock down all of this fire. And then that's when, all of a sudden the buildings imploded, supposedly from the heat of the fire melting the steel and causing the floors to pancake. All right, we'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm going to make one other comment here with regard to the cab driver footage. And if you have not seen it, it's about 19 minutes long, if it is still available on the web. But it's interesting. It's this individual driving through Mandalay Bay when, eerily, the shootings begin to happen. And as Kenneth had mentioned earlier, you can clearly hear what it sounds like an AR-15, and then one of these belt-driven machine guns, and you can hear one very close and one distant, and again, in my opinion, it shows that they two different locales for these particular shootings, and that the driver, in leaving Mandalay Bay and then hearing on the cab drivers their channel what's going on, and being told to clear out of that particular area, in leaving and driving away, encounters the crowd running from the concert where some of the shooting is taking place, and then getting away from that area, some people jump into the vehicle and then talk about what they had witnessed, about how they had seen multiple people shot. I believe the lady, several of the people in the cab describe hearing hundreds of rounds, and they believe that there would be hundreds, if not thousands, of people shot, and that they, the one of them said that she had blood on her from the people that were around her that had been shot. And again, we're still trying to figure out and to gain clarity on exactly what occurred. But certainly it seems strange to me that if this is a false flag and this is just some kind of psychological operation, there were people shot, and the bullets that rang through the Bellagio, they were real bullets. They brought down the glass, and so somebody was shooting with the intent to kill. And so, as I said, it certainly could be both aspects, but and then the one, as far as the individual that was shot in the arm, you could clearly see that, his arm looked really gruesome. He had a side wound as well, and his arm was still bleeding. I don't know if you guys caught that particular video, but do you know what I'm talking about at all?
Kenneth?
Either of you? Cathy or Kenneth?
I don't. I haven't
seen that one, Zen. Not with the man with the shot arm, no.
Okay.
I would like to see that one.
Yeah, I'll send it to y'all.
I do have another parallel I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, please do so.
If you recall back during the Twin Tower attacks in 2001, there was some insider activity in the sell-off of American Airlines and United.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And Cheryl Atkinson, who's now been kind of ousted by the establishment because of her pursuit of truth, she was actually on top of that story and all over it. You can Google that and see that there was executives for American Airlines and United selling off stocks prior to the event. Well, a similar thing has been reported by the Form 4 for the SEC. The CEO and major shareholder of MGM Grand Stocks, which owns Mandalay Bay, his name's James Marin, on the 7th of September sold off over 80% of his shares for a total of $10 million.
Wow.
Did he?
And the MGM stocks are now down about 10%, and they continue to drop. So,
did you know there is a channel? I wanted to add this because it's really interesting. There's a channel, Truth is Stranger Than Fiction. He did a video the other day connecting the Bohemian Grove and their camp, because there's different camps where the people who go stay, you know, the elites, the presidents, the CEOs, the bankers, all the who's who that go to the Bohemian Grove for whatever they do, and most of us know. But the most elite of the camps is called Mandalay. And so he was connecting it to this, and like you're talking about this man, I hadn't heard his name before, but the MGM execs and all these people, they stay at that Mandalay camp.
Wow, that's interesting. And then, there was that dark web exchange from some insider that warned of some sort of event. He said, stay away from Las Vegas. And, the woman who was going through, the Hispanic woman with her husband that the one eyewitness gave an account to, was going through the crowd about 40 minutes prior, warning that you're all going to die. Well, I don't know if you remember Lindsay, Pastor Lindsay. Okay, but he said that, I have his quote here too. One of the first things I've learned about the elites, and this is a pastor, a Baptist pastor who worked with the elites for years up on the Alaska pipeline. He said, I've learned this about the elites. They have a code of ethics, and their code of ethics is not the same as mine, who believe in the Word of God and the Bible. But one of the facets of the code of ethics is they must tell the world everything they're going to do before they do it. And this is where the buzzwords come in. And, well, it wasn't even just buzzwords here. There was a woman going through the crowd saying, you're all going to die. They get some sense of self-satisfaction or self-righteousness when they do this. So they announce everything before they do it. I'm just throwing that out. Could this have been their effort at satisfying their feigned code of ethics?
Right. Yeah. And it's interesting because also the woman that you're talking about, she describes this I believe she said that she was a 5'5" Mexican woman. She was there with her boyfriend, and that they were pushing through the crowd, causing trouble. And because of the disruption, they were removed. And 45 minutes prior, she was telling these people that they were all going to die. And just so you know, I did post that video that I'm talking about, which shows the individual that was shot, and you can see his arm still bleeding. It's near the 26:16 mark. But anyways, even in the police scanner, there's reports of multiple shooters from multiple ethnicities. A white guy, a young white guy. They speak about this other black guy with a big afro, in military fatigues and carrying a black duffel bag that seemed to be part of the, that was running from that particular scene after the shooting, that went into this RV. And I don't know what exactly happened after that, but there were multiple police saying that he was a possible suspect, and they seemed to have cornered him in that. I don't know if they took him into custody or if there was a fight or whatever, but he seemed to be connected to some of the Tropicana shootings. There were also said to be people with Latino ethnicity as well involved in the shooting. So who really knows? I mean, but there seems to, in the police scanner, that all of that evidence, reports of multiple different shooters from multiple different ethnicities, and you know, again, in my opinion, this whole scenario reeks of paramilitary, you know, some kind of rogue kind of special forces, SWAT kind of weird, you know, grouping, how as they show a lot of times in the movies, that there's these rogue elements, and whether it's a SWAT team or whatever. But yeah, in my opinion, that's what it all seems to be indicative of. And again, we don't know the truth. We're all still trying to figure this out, but definitely multiple shooters and not some lone, singular lone wolf, in this particular Stephen Paddock, again, who was a multimillionaire from real estate investments, professional gambler, just hanging out, you know, living there in Las Vegas, and gambling and spending time with his girlfriend and all. Go ahead.
I did want to mention he's an accountant with ties to Lockheed Martin, I believe.
Right.
But as
Gotta
an
watch
accountant,
out for those accountants.
As an accountant myself, I wanted to say we don't normally snap unless it's tax season.
Unless watch that movie, The Accountant. I don't know.
I know. Well, there's a Black Child video that utilizes that, and Jason Bourne video about this shooting. But I did want to mention, because we're talking about different videos and some information, I have prepared some pretty extensive notes, and as Zen is mentioning certain videos, I'm adding to a playlist, and all of this information is included, and I've made a tiny URL. So if you go to tinyurl.com, it's YAMPMXBL. And if you can't find it, email me at paralandra77@gmail.com. That's PERELANDRA77@gmail.com. I have never made notes this extensive, and it's all very current. It's like, you know, as of now, because to me, Monday is like history already. And I wanted to mention, following on what Kenneth was talking about things that are prescient, that are informing us in advance. Today, a story came out. They thought, you know, hey, maybe we should look back at the Illuminati card game. And sure enough, there's an Illuminati card, Las Vegas, and it has a dancing chorus girl and a jack of spades and an ace of spades cards. And oddly enough, or not oddly enough, Jason Aldean, who was the performer that was on when the shooting started, he has a tattoo on his bicep that is the jack of spades and the ace of spades, and it's positioned just like on the Illuminati card. And you can see this and link to the article in my notes if you'd like to get those. And also, the thing that I noticed first, because I started looking at this right away, they showed, and, you know, because there wasn't much that was out right at the first. And this is kind of, you know, silly, but I don't know, maybe not. They show off to me, it looked like it was pretty far away. I used to live in Vegas, but it looks like it's pretty far away from the Bellagio. There's a police car, and actually, I don't have the full picture in my notes, but to the side, you can see a guy who's just looking on his cell phone, you know, like people normally do. But the police are all at the ready around this police car. One guy's on the ground with his rifle out, and some guys are in the car. And it looked like a Charlie's Angels setting. So I put the Charlie's Angels action shot next to it, and it's exactly the same. It's really kind of interesting, but that was kind of fun. But, you know, I did want to mention that about him being an accountant. One of the videos that I saw at this point, and people are doing a really good job if they can keep them up, but this was more interesting looking at what is going on. Cui bono, who benefits? The predictions in Las Vegas, keeping on that tack. They're looking at Sheldon Adelson and Michael Chertoff, and this is very similar to what happened after 9/11, when the TSA was instituted and they started taxing for that, and we lost all of our freedoms with that. I don't like to fly anymore. I won't fly anymore. And people are complaining about, and there's a lot of health information that's out there. I don't have that available about the backscatter x-ray machines. Well, apparently, and this is in the video that Truth Stream Media did, they had these machines that they wanted to put into the casinos, into these hotels, and they weren't able to, get people on board with the idea. So they're just, off like in a storehouse or something. So now this is the day after they already were scanning guests at the Wynn in a glimpse of the Las Vegas future. And in my mind, I think Las Vegas is where they would want to start. People say, as California goes, so goes the nation. Well, as Las Vegas goes, so goes all hotels. So I find that very interesting.
Oh, that's going to be huge money.
The stock has already skyrocketed.
I bet. And yeah, that's going to be big money for the security brokers and those that are involved with those scanner machines. And, it also serves the perverts behind the whole deal, the whole naked scanners, because, basically they're looking at everybody nude as well. And so it fulfills that aspect of the whole thing as well. I mean, because these guys are perverts and they're just laughing at everybody, basically looking at everybody nude, whoever they want to. But would you mind reading some of that as far as the anonymous posts which are connected to this, the Eerie Predictions? Because I think that is telling in and of itself. This individual.
Okay, which one was that? I'm not sure.
The anonymous posts.
That were on 4chan.
Yeah. The green boxes. The individual that.
I pulled a clip of it. Oh yeah, that's true, because it was just in the video. It's in the video. She did a real good job. And it was posted. This was wild. It was posted 1 second before midnight on 9/11. So it was posted on 9/10 at 23:59 seconds. And the guy's name was John. And he says, "Look, I feel bad for some of you on this website, so I'll let you in on a little secret. If you live in Las Vegas or Henderson, stay inside tomorrow. Don't go anywhere near there where there are large groups of people. Also, if you see 3 black vans parked next to each other, immediately leave the area. You're welcome. And then just stay away. Go to Arizona if you can. They won't bother you in Arizona." And, for it to be, a month in advance, that's not, that's still well within the timeline. And he says, this is very interesting. It's called the High Incident Project. So that's a key phrase. They want to make the American public think that places with extremely high security aren't safe. They are trying to create more regulations. You will see laws proposed within the next few years to put up more metal detectors and other security devices. Media and politicians will be saying places with lots of police need even more police. I can't guarantee anything will happen tomorrow, but Las Vegas is on their minds. And then he finished, if their plan is successful, state of Nevada will pass a law in the future making all casinos have mandatory metal detectors and backscatter machines. Soon after, a federal law will be passed to put these machines in universities, high schools, federal buildings. You name it. OSI Systems and Chertoff are the main producers of these machines. Sometime around 2020, Chertoff and OSI will merge into a single company. After they merge, the owners will sell off all their stock and make billions in profit. Mr. Chertoff has been in contact with Sheldon Adelson. Mr. Adelson will become a huge sponsor of these machines, and he will be the first to put them in his casinos when the law passes. This is my last message for now. Don't expect me to return anytime soon. And, following in this week, Reuters had an article that I didn't look at it, as far as what actually happened. Congress was looking at outlawing these back stock. I think. Oh no, bump stock.
Bump
Kenneth?
stock. Yes,
Yeah,
bump.
you know what. Yeah, so they're already doing stuff on it, and I thought, oddly enough, too, something that came out in a UK paper. I'm not sure exactly which one it was. It's in my notes if you want to get my notes. I've got to find this because this is incredible. Where is it? Okay. UK embraces pre-crime. Brits face 15 years in prison for watching terrorist material. The UK.
My gosh.
Yeah, this was what day? The
Like
3rd.
The Minority Report.
I know, this is on the 3rd. The UK's Home Secretary, Amber Rudd, is the latest bureaucrat to highlight the increased global trend of governments going completely insane. Her latest plan is to threaten the British population with up to 15 years in prison for the crime of watching terrorist material. Yes, you read that right. So, this all just keeps moving along, and they have incidents like this to help propel it. Because you look at the public. I even went to, I'm just add this and I'll let you guys get back in. I went and I talked to the man I contract for today, and he's former law enforcement. It's been a while, but he's a hunter and he has handguns. And I asked him what he thought about this. I thought this was so obvious, and he's completely on board with it. And, I was expressing some of my disbelief because I haven't really seen a lot of blood, and I'm hearing the stories, and I want to mention this a little bit more later about, injuries and death. It seems like we're all kind of 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon from somebody who was hurt or died. And to me, I haven't seen that. And I've been looking very intently since Monday morning, very early. And so I was asking him, and he showed me one picture that really looked like real blood to me, but he's completely on board with how the official story is being related. And it's been changed even just this afternoon. The timeline has been changed. So, people are not questioning very much. And by yesterday, the news and the talk seems to have really died down, which is bizarre when you consider this is supposed to be the largest mass, murder in U.S. history.
Yeah, and as far as, most people are going to buy the official story no matter what. I mean, because most people are not, they trust media, they trust the government, they trust their doctors, and so they have no reason to second guess anything, but and so most of the people will be sheeple, but again, this is all unfolding with regard to the detail, but I do personally believe that people were shot and people were killed, and that there was blood involved, and that there were, these paramilitary shooters. Now, as far as if people, as far as the machine gun and especially these belt-fed guns, if that was going on, there should be mass, massacres. I mean, lines of people, because those guns would split, would just cut people in half. Now, whether that kind of thing, I mean, we don't know.
Didn't you hear in some of that Broadcastify recording that they were talking about shooters on the ground at a certain gate, or in different.
Yeah.
Well, see, now that's what I'm wondering about. If they were in other areas than what I'm seeing the footage and the pictures of, and that's why some of us are questioning we don't see it, but yet that's where the carnage took place. That's where people were actually killed, and they don't have any compunction about killing people. I don't doubt that at all. It's just I'm still questioning, and I'm such a doubter anymore. I'm still wondering where's the evidence I would expect to see in preponderance. It was like looking early on at some of the footage. There are people like at a beer stand, and they were doing cell phone, and the gal was looking at the crowd, and she said, I don't buy it. She said, I don't see anybody who's injured or bloody. So, it's that kind of stuff that has me questioning. But, I'm hearing stories that, so many people that are in our small circle of people are affected. I know at least 4 people who died that are people that I know well. And, not the people who died, but other people that I know well.
They know other people, yeah.
And this is just blowing my mind. So I've started to keep a list. So if people know people who were harmed or who died, let me know, because I'm compiling a list of this stuff. And just email me, Paralander77.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are reporting. I personally don't know anybody that.
You're the first.
But but certainly there are individuals. But again, that video that I sent to you and Kenneth, and also that I posted in the chat, this guy clearly was shot, and there's blood still coursing out of his arm, and he was shot in the side as well. Then I saw the one video where the individual is going through what seems to be a crime scene of individuals that have been shot, that are laying down on the ground, that are clearly not breathing and look dead. But again, as far as 500 people, we've not seen anything with regard to that. But again, we don't have everything out yet, so we'll be right back anyway. All right, welcome back for a second hour. I'm your host, Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. I have as co-host with me this evening Cathy Dunson and special guest Brother Kenneth Beer. We've been talking about the Vegas false flag event, the multiple shooters, and what seems to be this high incident project that has been spoken about, and the connections to definitely the implementation of all of these scanners across the board as they did in the airports, that certainly Vegas will never be the same. And already I'm sure they are in the process of implementing different security measures to make sure, as far as metal detectors and more in-depth pat-downs, screenings, examination of luggage, and those kind of things, that certainly many things will be put into place. Also, Joe's in the chat room posted, which I thought is something very interesting as well. Keep in mind that cameras are everywhere in Vegas. Definitely police state, as we see in London, where there's cameras on every corner. That in the casinos, there's all these cameras, especially near the gambling, the tables. They have high, very detailed security cameras that can zoom in and that are watching and taking and probably recording everything. And certainly in the hallways, different things like that. And so there should be evidence of all of these different individuals, these shooters, these different groups. However it played out, they should be able to piece it together play by play from one camera to the next and release it as they do when they put together as they do in some of these movies where they show footage going from one security camera to the other and piecing together the crime and the unfolding of it, that it should be easy to reconstruct here, especially in Vegas, where there are so many cameras. that if they wanted to release the truth, they certainly could. But again, they don't even want us to know about multiple shooters. But I did hear recently that just today there was an article speaking about, and I think it's because it's undeniable, especially when you listen to the police scan, that there undoubtedly were multiple shooters and multiple types of guns being used. And so maybe they're trying to back down a little bit on that whole lone wolf because it's totally implausible, and it shows the lunacy of the mainstream media and propagandizing a particular story in a particular manner. Kathy?
I wanted to point out something that happened on September 30 that got lost in the mix here. There was a mystery dump. State Department releases thousands of Hillary Clinton documents. Did you all know that?
Mm-mm.
Yeah. And
she needs to be in jail.
Yeah, there's a video that just came out, the most important video on the web of Vegas shooting. Key players identified. This is it. It just came out. I haven't watched it. I added it to my list. But I definitely would take a look at that. Without much fanfare, the State Department has released over 6,000 documents related to Hillary Clinton's time as Secretary of State, prompting speculation that it might contain explosive revelations. So I've got that too. Yeah, stuff that makes you go, Right. Las Vegas and the manipulation of history. And I'm actually thinking they're manipulating history live.
Right, yeah, fully.
And this came through Ole Damagard, who I've been following. He is the guy on this stuff. He knows stuff. And I was watching this one video I also have that shows a comparison of Charleston, because it seems to me, obviously, that there are elements here. It's fiction and nonfiction that's being melded together. This is a new type that we are seeing. And I'm also thinking, what is this thing where we know so many people who have some kind of connection to someone who was impacted? And it made me wonder, just to toss this out, is CERN ramping up right now? So I don't mean to make light of anything. It's just, this is so bizarre. I haven't ever encountered anything quite like this. I mean, we could look at some of the elements that are just beyond crazy. The questions, where in the pictures that have come out from the hotel room, this man who had all these high-powered weapons, he's wearing loafers. You see loafers on his feet. And Mark Sargent brought that up. He has done his show on Tuesday night. It was very good. He had a military gunner that was on. They were talking about all of these elements. And last night, his show with Patricia Steer, Flat Earth and Other Hot Potatoes. They had a lot of really great stuff come up. But Mike Adams put out a video and an article asking just really simple questions. Where's all the expended brass? Where are the carpet burns from hot brass and hot gun barrels? And when seconds count, the police are only 72 minutes away.
Right,
yeah. And he said, this will be my last stupid question, Mike. He said, these rounds are usually about 55 grains in mass, and they lose about 75% of their kinetic energy by the time they reach a 400-yard target, which was the distance. See, this is one of the things that the man I was talking to today, he said, well, yeah, this guy could have done it. And I said, he's 64 years old. Don't you think this would be kind of hard on him? 1,000 rounds shooting in 10 minutes? He said, no, he could have done it. I don't see logically how that could have been. And I don't know anything about guns or ammo, but I was glad to find this here. Thank you, who sent it in to me, that, documented they lose 75% of their energy in that kind of an environment. But, others are thinking that it's quite possible that it's like shooting fish in a barrel from that distance. And just the sheer lack of movies, cell phone footage, videos. People would have been driving down the strip. They would have heard this commotion, looked up. I haven't seen anything showing muzzle flashes from the 32nd floor. Of course, none of us believe it, but well over 90% of the population do. They believe exactly what the official story is. it's just totally implausible.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that whole thing with 32nd floor, you can see in some of the videos the window's not even knocked out when all the shots are going off, and certainly where the security guard is walking down the street, you can see the Mandalay Bay on the right, and clearly the 32nd floor, all of the floors, and there's no shots ringing out, and yet you hear the sounds. And in my opinion, it's clearly coming from the concert venue. And as I said, in the police, the scanner material, they report a shooter on the concert floor near the gates, and that's where a lot of the individuals that were shot in the back of the concert venue. And so it wasn't even in the front, but supposedly in the back, and even near the parking lot.
Well, today there's video that came out in audio, and it's really well done. It's by people that I very much trust on their research, and it shows, or you can hear that gunfire started before. Officially, they say that it did. The songs are still going on, and it was somebody. And this is something I've done at concerts where you you're just holding your cell phone up and you're taking, right. And so many people be doing it. Well, somebody was, and you can hear off to the side gunfire start a little bit, and then you can hear metal, like a bullet metal against the ground, and then you hear actual screaming, which is something else I had not heard before. So this was a really good video that shows all of this. It's very short, and the way he put it together is very good, and you can see also Aldine, the musician, up on the stage, and then the shooting starts after you're already hearing the screaming and other shooting off to the side. So that's something that no one else is really putting out there at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'd like to see that one myself.
Get my notes.
Yeah. Kenneth, would you like to comment, brother?
Two conservative radio talk show hosts that I've noticed aren't going with the flow, so to speak. One is Michael Savage. He has about 5 million listeners across the country, and he's asking questions like we are today, and he's encouraging witnesses and any experts on military operations to call in. And some of the callers he's received this week are just amazing. One in particular drove past this lone wolf's house in Mesquite, Nevada, and there's no crime scene tape around this home. It's
not really.
And the man, I heard the call today, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is really crazy. And then another caller called in and said he was the neighbor to Pollard, and he would have a beer with him after work, and he would sit with his garage door open, and they'd just talk. And this guy is like the nicest guy around. And then I was thinking after that, 23 weapons in this room, 12 had the bump fire stocks on them, and yet you don't see any witnesses from any gun ranges saying, oh, yeah, he used to come and shoot.
Mm-hmm.
True.
You just don't take a firearm like this and shoot it right out of the box. You become accustomed to it, yet there are no witnesses from any firing ranges or anywhere else that have ever seen this man shoot a firearm.
They seem to be building a case that he had this secret life.
Right,
that's what's on Drudge today.
That's what they're trying to do, right? Yeah, and then the other thing is again, as we said, you can't just go and buy this kind of military gear in your gun shop, your neighborhood gun store.
And it's expensive. It's very expensive. I had no idea. It's like tens of thousands of dollars to get the kind of fire power that he would have needed to do what he did.
And if you accumulate, sorry, Kenneth, but if you accumulated this kind of weaponry, most certainly you're going to be on somebody's radar as to gathering this kind of equipment, I mean, so go ahead, Kenneth.
I own an AK-47, and I have 30-round clips, and I've bump fired the firearm It's not good for your gun because it can warp the barrel. But the natural tendency of the firearm when you're in that mode of firing is for it to lift up.
Lift up, yes.
We've talked about the fact that he's a 64-year-old man, and there had to be at least 1,000 rounds. And if he's not going belt fed, which you can do, you usually need a second hand to do the belt feed.
Right.
You could have a round type of clip that would give you about 100, but you still have 10 changes there. Now you have to execute all this.
10 minutes.
And the strain on your body when you're in the bump fire mode is pretty severe. I just can't picture myself discharging 1,000 rounds in 10 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. And think about it. There were roughly 500 injured, slightly fewer. That means that for every 2 rounds you fired, you had 1 hit.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. That too. Yeah.
I don't buy it.
Yeah, I don't either.
One gun expert, I was reading his account, John Rappaport's blog. Very good information. There's several articles. He was saying, if this guy is the real deal, we needed him in Afghanistan.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Another talk show host, conservative, you can check his site out. It's warroom.com. It's Jim Quinn. Conservative talk show host, just, he's bringing it up every day, and I listen to him in the morning on the drive in, and he's questioning a lot of these things now. So those are 2 that are straying from the herd, Michael Savage and Jim Quinn. And what I see happening is the mainstream narrative is shifting because they don't have enough critical mass to maintain the original narrative like they did in Oklahoma City and the 9/11 tragedy up at the Twin Towers. So you see a slight shifting. But then tonight on Fox, right before the show, the Attorney General for the state of Nevada corrected the Fox host when he said there were more than 1, because I guess the sheriff mentioned that.
Yes, he said suspects.
Yeah, he jumped in there. That Attorney General jumped in there and said, our position is 1 gunman. He will not.
Yeah.
Like, get with the program, dude. There's too much evidence. Too much evidence.
Right.
One, I don't know if either of you had noticed this, but Michael Savage, he had a gal call in, and she was standing next to someone who was shot in the stomach, but she was not even facing the hotel.
Wow.
And
Wow.
Michael Savage had asked her if the police had asked her any of the questions he was asking her. She said no, they had not. And he said, do not do any more interviews. And she needed to disappear right now because it was some really, really damning evidence that she would have to tell.
Yeah, she could have some of those witnesses from the Twin Tower collapse, some of the eyewitnesses who gave contrary testimony, and then they end up disappeared or dead.
Yeah, right. Right. And but again, with all of what, with all the people, with all their phones, I think there's just going to be more and more and more come forth. Yeah, because even people that were just recording and running, I mean, all of that, there's going to be a lot of evidence that people don't think is important or critical right now, that because they are lying to us and because they are trying to formulate the story in a particular manner, that a lot of that will confirm to the contrary as to the things that we're bringing up and we're asking, and that others, because so many are, and this isn't just going to disappear. Yeah.
On that note, there was early on a request from the Las Vegas Police Department for people to bring their footage into the police department, not to upload it, but to bring in their video.
Make sure you make copies before taking it in, because that will get disappeared into the lost pile.
Exactly. They'll decide what gets out there.
Right. They want to control the narrative. Yeah, exactly.
That interview with the cabbie was on Facebook, and there was like 2 million views, and Facebook took it down.
Mm-hmm.
People are uploading,
that was
and
interesting.
Yeah, they're uploading and re-uploading, and I've got a bunch of stuff.
Right. So. Yeah, and then those of us that know to, grab it while you can, because it will disappear. I know I've been downloading. I know you have, and others have, and that we're saving and compiling this evidence because we know that their whole way of operation is to make it disappear, and to only allow to remain that which supports the official narrative.
Writing their history. I wanted to share this. It's Ole Damagard, and he's the one on false flag operations. He's done a lot of really great interviews. It's OleDammegard. You can find him, his channel, and his website. And I wanted to read this because you see a lot of shoes at these false flag events. And he said this in his show, that it was recorded 2 days before the London Bridge attack, and they talked a lot about the information that was actually confirmed later. Anyway, he said, "This is also where I found one thing extremely important as well. All the shoes that are all over the place. When you look at the victims, I don't know how many of these different terror attacks there are trainers lying around all over the place. There are victims without 1 or 2 shoes. Shoes arranged nicely next to the victims. Shoes on the pavement. And I found out a few months ago what that is all about. According to Freemasonic rituals, you can find this on a Freemasonic for Dummies site, that type of website. You will see that in their rituals. From the very beginning, when somebody has to go through one of these rituals, they take off 1 shoe, and sometimes they pull up 1 trouser leg. The reason they do that is because that is a symbol, a sign that has this individual is doing this voluntarily and is voluntarily taking part in this ritual. If 2 shoes are taken off, it's a sign of showing homage and respect to the sacrificial place. So what they are doing with these shoes lying all over there, these are a secret language telling Freemasons and people all over the world that are involved in these things that this is our operation. We are totally in control. The people that are doing this, if 1 or 2 shoes off, they are doing it voluntarily. And also another thing, they often do it right by an obelisk. And this was months ago. They erect an obelisk within a year from when they carry it out, if there's not an obelisk there. And in this case, the Luxor was right across the street, Sphinx and obelisk there.
Oh, Cathy, leveraging on that, Bill Cooper did a video, and I suppose you could find it on the internet. It was the Luxor. Him and his family toured the Luxor, and he did a video. The Luxor has a little boat you could ride through, like I guess you're on the Nile. And he was appalled or amazed or whatever, but he did this video, and it shows the first 3 steps of the Blue Lodge in Freemasonry.
Mystery School, I found it.
Mystery School, yeah. So post that, but that was right across the street from the sacrifice site. So if you want to get into the occult on this, there are all these different signs. It's it raises more questions than I think it answers. And then one thing I heard, Michael Savage, just like he was irate. He said, "So who do you believe today anymore? Do you believe Jake Tapper or Wolf Blitzer from CNN? Right. Yeah, right. Or you believe ISIS, who has tripled down now, claiming this man joined Islam 6 months ago. They are emphatic on this.
You mean the Department of the CIA, ISIS?
Exactly. So it's like, who do you believe today? I look towards all these alt media folks, the independents, the Zens and the Cathys and all the people out there with their blogs. I get better information. I can fit puzzle pieces together so much better just following all the different independent researchers out there. It's a really sad state we're in. I'm not belittling what anybody does out there on their own. But we used to be able to trust the media. We can't do that.
Oh, you know, and I didn't add to that last thing about the shoes. One of the most iconic pictures that's come out of Las Vegas is a pair of cowboy boots that have the American flag on them.
Yes, did you see that?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and we're 3 days into this, and so, and I'm sure there are people that have footage out there that are terrified and don't want to bring forth. Who knows what they have actually captured? Perhaps even the shooters themselves. 'Cause
people could send film to us, or Mark Sargent has put out a call that people could send him footage too. So if they didn't want to be
frightened, and you don't want to post it, certainly.
But I would feel an obligation to get the information out, but I could understand if you had young children or, if you're married. But I don't mind. Send it to me. Paralandra77@gmail.com. I'll send it to Zen.
Yeah, certainly. I'm not afraid, and I will post it, and I will keep you anonymous. In fact, you don't even have to tell us who you are. And we'll be glad to share it and to get it out there. Certainly, we have overcome that a very long time ago with regard to being concerned. Yeah, right. Yeah, that and so many other things. But but also I do want to just pray for the families and for the individuals and those that were affected, and even for this country and our world. The fact that these kind of terroristic elements are protected and supported by governments, and also that their behaviors and actions are covered up by law enforcement and by those organizations and those groups that have been put into place to protect us from such insanity. And yet we see so much that often they are part of the perpetuation and the instigation of such things. It's a sad thing for the people to not be able to trust those that you look to for the preservation of the lives of your loved ones and your family and yourself. And it's a sad state of the world. We'll be right back, everyone. All right, welcome back, everybody, for final segment. I do want to also thank the listening audience and those of you that come here and support our program, that listen to our shows, and especially to the Truth Frequency Radio family and those that gather and that share fellowship and dialogue with us in the chat room. We really appreciate all of you, and for being seekers of truth yourself, and for not listening to or following or bowing down to anybody in looking for somebody else's professional opinion, but that in studying and seeking to find and uncover truth for yourself, that is what makes this particular program, this show, unique, and the fellowship and the gathering of all of us in the different manners. I know many of you send me items and that help us to learn and also to expand our horizons on so many different topics, and that all of us working together, we are supporting each other in learning more than we could individually. And that, if we miss something, that we can help one another to gain understanding of the fullness of the story. And I think that's really a beautiful thing, and it's unique among, as far as the different radio broadcasts and radio programs. I know there's a lot of those that are doing what we are doing as well, but it's a beautiful thing to share truth and fellowship with a wise group of individuals such as yourself, and that are so open and awakened to truth and discernment in way that is largely ignored by world. You know, most of the world still believes they can trust their government, trust their doctors, trust the mainstream news. They never question or second guess anything that is offered to them, but just, you know, without second guessing, second questioning, or even introspecting into anything, that they are fully compliant and bow down to the authority, and feed at the altar of Baal, in my opinion, and just remaining blind and stupid and ignorant. And in this day and age, you know, it really is a choice, and it's refreshing that there are those of you that choose not to be ignorant and choose to, and that want to know the truth of what's going on. I think truth is important, and so I commend you, applaud you, and honor you, all of you, for your stance on truth. Real quick comment from Scotty Jones in the chat room says, you used to be able to trust mainstream media, ? Or you hadn't yet known not to trust them, and that is the truth of the matter. Let's go to Kenneth, and then we'll go to Cathy.
Yeah, it's a good comment, Scotty. As I was speaking that, I was kind of thinking what you said. Maybe a better way to say it is you got more truth from them than we do today, which I believe is none. I wanted to share this definition with everyone out of the Oxford Dictionary. This is the big 16-volume set that takes up like an entire shelf at the library. I have a copy here at home, and this is the definition for terrorism. This is definition number 1 in the Oxford Dictionary. Government by intimidation as directed and carried out by the party in power. That's the first definition. And the second definition is a policy intended to strike with terror those against whom it is adopted. You know, and right away out of the mouths of all of these officials, we get, this is not an act of terrorism. Well, then what would you call it?
Right.
And I don't think people understand what terrorism is and its origin, but that is out of the Oxford Dictionary, the big 16-volume tome that defines the English language. So, you know, Humpty Dumpty said in Lewis Carroll's mean the mean. And today we've just changed the meaning of words. But I think the insiders know what these words mean. And this, go ahead, Cathy.
I'll take your word terrorism and I'll raise it with a word I learned last night listening to Max Egan, and it's been taken out of the dictionary, and I wonder why. The word is kakistocracy, which is a system of government which is run by the worst, least qualified, or the most unscrupulous citizens.
Yes.
That's what we got.
Yes. And that's where we're at today, folks, and it's sad.
Yes.
It's really sad that that's where we're at. We used to have statesmen.
Yes.
Now we have politicians.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a huge difference between the two. And it's a very sad state of affairs.
Talking about the media, you know, I used to trust them too. And I used to trust politicians. I used to look for good politicians, you know, be a good Republican and all that. And you know, now I've been, in the most recent years, I've been let down over and over again. And now I know, you know, I've learned and I know so much better about what the truth is, the left-right paradigm, and then so much more that each of us needs to understand. The central banking system, it's a travesty, and all of what they're doing, it's planned, it's an agenda, and it's not going to get any better without Jesus Christ, without Yeshua HaMashiach as your Savior. You don't have a reason to get up in the morning. I sure don't. Not with this, like our show last night with Johnny Cerrucci about what is it? The eaters of children, pedocracy.
Pedocracy.
Right. It's a frightening world, demons and devils. And we see this played out. And it's a shame. It's, I mean, that is such a tame word for it, that the first thing that we do when we see this kind of an event is we start wondering, is this a false flag? And I've been telling people, they all are. I haven't seen anything that I could believe to be true. And why would I think any different? Because I know what their agenda is. I know that they're filling the skies with chemicals to poison our food and our water and kill our flora and fauna and us. And so why would I think any differently? Why would I think that the government would not be behind something like this? And when the story starts to fall apart so easily as it does on this, it's really sad that that's where we are, but it is.
Well, I've mentioned some of this to just people I bump into during the day, and I've probably had this said to me 10 times this week. Ken, you're not trying to make a conspiracy theory out of this. I just want to remind them where that term was coined by the CIA.
Right.
After people started questioning the Warren Commission report. And I forget who it was. It might have been Mike Adams with Health Ranger, who reminded us that Congress actually reopened that investigation and ordered the establishment of a special committee to reinvestigate the assassination of JFK, yet it has never happened. So people that were labeled conspiracy theorists by the CIA have been vindicated, yet those people in that, what's that word again, Cathy?
Cacistocracy.
Our cacistocracy have not done what they mandated to do, and that is to reinvestigate the JFK assassination. So when you question what we're questioning on this show tonight, I mean, it's almost like common sense. You have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys don't mind, could I read this Slavery in the Eight Veils? This is something, because early on I was looking at the way people are just, they don't want to hear the truth. I mean, there was a lot of anger because I was saying this is a false flag. Sure, 9/11 people die. Yes. But it's a false flag. They don't want to hear that. Everything can't be a false flag. And I said, why? Why?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not seeking the truth of the matter. That's just throwing out a statement. Yes, it can. And, that's the kind of world that we live in. But
especially when it is.
Yeah, exactly. You have to look at the facts. So let me read this. It's called Slavery in the Eight Veils. It's by Don Harkins. And this is something Kenneth gave to me. Over the last several years, I've evolved and discarded several theories in an attempt to explain why it is that most people cannot see truth, even when it smacks them in the face. Those of us who can see the conspiracy have participated in countless conversations amongst ourselves that address the frustration of most people's inability to comprehend the extremely well-documented arguments, which we use to describe the process of our collective enslavement and exploitation. The most common explanation to be arrived at is that most people just don't want to see what is really going on. Extremely evil men and women who make up the world's power elite have cleverly cultivated a virtual pasture so grass green that few people seldom, if ever, bother to look up from where they are grazing long enough to notice the brightly colored tags stapled to their ears. The same people who cannot see their enslavement for the pasture grass have a tendency to view as insane conspiracy theorists. Those of us who can see past the farm and into the parlor of his feudal lordship's castle. Finally, I understand why. It's not that those who don't see that their freedom is vanishing under the leadership of the power elite don't want to see it. They simply can't see it. What is happening to them because of the unpierced veils that block their view. All human endeavors are a filtration process. Sports is one of the best examples. We play specific sports until we get kicked off the playground. The pro athletes we pay big bucks to watch just never got kicked off the playground. Where millions of kids play Little League each spring, they are filtered out until there are about 50 guys who go to the World Series in October. Beyond the first veil, there are over 6 billion people on the planet. Most of them live and die without having seriously contemplated anything other than what it takes to keep their lives together. 90% of all humanity will live and die without having pierced the first veil. The first veil. 10% of us will pierce the first veil and find the world of politics. We will vote, be active, and have an opinion. Our opinions are shaped by the physical world around us. We have a tendency to accept that government officials, network media personalities, and other experts are voices of authority. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having pierced the second veil. The second veil. 10% of us will pierce the second veil to explore the world of history, the relationship between man and government, and the meaning of self-government through constitutional and common law. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having pierced the third veil. The third veil. 10% of us will pierce the third veil to find that the resources of the world, including people, are controlled by extremely wealthy and powerful families whose incorporated old world assets have, with modern extortion strategies, become the foundation upon which the world's economy is currently indebted. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having pierced the fourth veil. The fourth veil. 10% of us will pierce the fourth veil to discover the Illuminati, Freemasonry, and the other secret societies. These societies use symbols and perform ceremonies that perpetuate the generational transfers of arcane knowledge that is used to keep the ordinary people in political, economic, and spiritual bondage to the oldest bloodlines on earth. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having pierced the fifth veil. The fifth veil. 10% of us will pierce the fifth veil to learn that the secret societies are so far advanced technologically that time travel and interstellar communications have no boundaries, and controlling the actions of people is what their members do as offhandedly as we tell our children when they must go to bed. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without having pierced the sixth veil. The sixth veil. 10% of us will pierce the sixth veil, where the dragons and lizards and aliens we thought were the fictional monsters of childhood literature are real and are the controlling forces behind the secret societies. 90% of the people in this group will live and die without piercing the seventh veil. The seventh veil. I do not know what is behind the seventh veil. I think it is where your soul is evolved to the point you can exist on earth and be the man Gandhi was or the woman Peace Pilgrim was, people so enlightened they brighten the world around them no matter what. The eighth veil, piercing the eighth veil probably reveals God and the pure energy that is the life force in all living beings, which are, I think, one and the same. If any math is accurate, there are only about 60,000 people on the planet who have pierced the sixth veil. The irony here is too incredible. Those who are stuck behind veils 1 through 5 have little choice but to view the people who have pierced the veils beyond them as insane. With each veil pierced, exponentially shrinking numbers of increasingly enlightened people are deemed insane by exponentially increasing masses of decreasingly enlightened people. Adding to the irony, the harder a sixth or better veiler tries to explain what he is able to see to those who can't, the more insane he appears to them.
I love that. I love that. With that, I want to share something as well. It's a poem that I wrote that fits right along with it. It's part with this show, Seekers Revealed. The grand deception as matrix is all-encompassing, consuming, and broad-reaching, yet so covert in imposition, it is largely unnoticed by those born into its nurturance. Comfortable in deceit and the convenience of routine, most reject truth when confronted by it. People do not like being told that they've been bamboozled, especially by those systems they have invested trust within. Few will latch on to anything that challenges or contradicts foundational belief, choosing to cling to false illusion so long as either it is majority opinion or someone they admire perpetuates the lie. Fewer are willing to embrace change, having no real concern for truth, and as such will not put forth the least bit of effort to its discovery. Many disregard it as meaningless, and even then it is monumental task to change mindset, to embrace new perspective. Most have tendency to lash out immediately against anything or anyone that challenges what they think they already know. Thus, the seeker of lost paradise may seem a fool to those who have never sought the other worlds. This is the secrets revealed. Kenneth? Kenneth, you there, brother?
Oh, sorry, I had my mute on.
You're good, brother.
Amen to what you both read. Back in 2013, I did a message, SDG 70, folks, if you want to listen to it, it's exactly what Cathy talked about. I tied it into scriptures, and I showed you how God talked to us about conspiracy and about these veils. SDG 70, Blog Talk Radio, you can listen to it. And then the next message I did was message 71, which was spiritual sight and light pierces the veils. So, folks, I encourage you that if God's talking to you and you're starting to wake up like this, dive into these things. Ask him to reveal this stuff to you, and he will. He said, I'll bring the Holy Spirit to you, and he'll lead you unto all truth. So, folks, God wants you to wake up. God wants you to see these truths. He doesn't want you to be bound. He doesn't want you to be in slavery. He wants you to be set free. And Jesus said, you'll know the truth, and the truth will make you free.
Yes, he came to set the captives free. But also, I would state to those of you that are awakening to be careful with regard to who you share or try to share your newfound introspection with, because, again, and all of us had to learn this the hard way. Some people just don't want to hear it. And I know that the things that have become important to you, especially with regard to truth and to understanding and to the conspiracy realities that are everywhere around us, that once you pierce the veil and that you start to go through some of these veils that Cathy is talking about, that you want to share, especially with your loved ones, your family members, your spouses, your children, your parents. You want to share such truths, but again, unless they are ready and open and willing to listen, they're not going to hear it anyways, and that all you'll do is succeed in convincing them that you are crazy. And and then, when you do so, it's hard to repair the breach and to find a common ground to where you can go back to, just being loving and caring to one another. That if you drive that wedge between and convince them that you're nuts, then it's hard to have the kind of relating that you shared previously. So just know that, and even Christ told us, and the scriptures tell us to not throw pearls before swine, that they're not concerned with hearing it, or they won't honor it, they won't listen anyway. So just be careful and weary with your newfound awakening and with what, because we are the wisdom keepers. We are the holders of the secrets, and most people have no concern, as Cathy read with the 8 veils, which I love that. I've never heard that before, and it's so very true. And so, most of the world will be asleep. They have no concern for the kingdom. They do not prioritize truth in their lives. They are mostly involved with entertaining distraction. And so with that, they are going to be caught up in strong delusion, and they will never come to the truth, even in the entirety of their lives. Most people will go to the grave without understanding the reality of what's really going on and what this is really about, why we are here, who we are, and what all this is truly all about. But I want to give both of you a chance for final commentary. We just got about 3-4 minutes remaining, so if you would, just a couple minutes each. Let's go to Kenneth first, and then we'll finish up with Cathy.
Brother Zen, I just want to amplify what you just encouraged the listeners to do, and I want to use a very short story out of the Bible, out of the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2. Mary had just received a visitation from the angel and was informed that she would conceive from upon high by the power of the Holy Spirit and should be the mother of Jesus Christ. And Luke 2:19 says, and this was some incredible information at the time, like mind-shattering, earth-shattering, The Lord was going to condescend. He was going to incarnate. He was going to become one of us. And he was going to use Mary as a vessel. And here's what Luke 2:19 said. And Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. So, folks, when the Lord starts to reveal these truths to you, like Zen said, just be careful who you share them with. Keep them in your heart, close to your heart, and ponder them in your heart. Because these things are going to be like spiritual dynamite to people that don't want to hear. And you will alienate yourself from your friends and family. And believe me, I'm speaking from firsthand experience. This is probably not the wisest way to do it. So as doors open and the Lord gives you opportunities, then you can share it as you still maintain a relationship with your friends and family. So just remember Luke 2:19. And Mary kept things and pondered them in her heart.
Amen. We learned the hard way, so learn from our experience. Go ahead, Cathy.
Well, and that piece, Slavery in the Egg Bells, you could tell it really moves me. When Kenneth sent it to me, I went through a period of mourning. Again, there are certain things in my experience that have awakened me more, and also was the loss of my quote-unquote innocence, things that I thought were true, but which were not. And that it's wonderful knowing the truth, but then you are alienated. You have a harder time discoursing with other people, but you have such an insatiable appetite to know more, and it all aligns with Scripture. If you know God, if you have the Holy Spirit, you know that this is the truth, and you just keep seeking more. There's really nothing else to do. And that will lead you to flat earth, by the way. If you honestly look, we know this, and it's a wonderful thing because, like, the book 50 Reasons or Earth Stands Flat, those two books that are in our Sacred Word Publishing, those were just amazing to me that the authors in the late 1800s, early 1900s were writing so forcefully and firmly, holding to Scripture. This is God's Word, and it is true, and we are not spinning all these crazy different motions that they are trying to tell you from science, from godless men who really despise the Word of God and His Son, and they don't want anything to do with it, and they were tools of Satan. And to this day, even now, and even so much more ingrained, it all lines up together. There's a thread through it all, and it is Satan in our world, this fallen world, that God is trying to reach out to us and tell us the truth. So we should listen.
Hey, one quick scripture, Ecclesiastes 1:18. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth.
Amen. Thank you,
Amen.
Kenneth, brother. That was the perfect scripture to end with. God bless all of you. Thank you
Shalom.
for joining us. Be blessed, and happy Sukkot. Shalom all. Good night.